amazing story out today. It's a report from Christy Romero, who's the acting Special Inspector General for Tarp. And she lays out exactly what happened. It turns out that we let the banks out of Tarp earlier. Now, why is that a bad thing? Okay, because the whole point of Tarp was supposed to make sure that they get financially stable, and that once they are stable, then they could go on to do business, you know, hopefully with some new restrictions so they don't screw it up again. But instead, what wound up happening is no new restrictions, no new rules, and it turns out they were not stable at all when we let them out. Now, why did we do that? Well, it's because the bank executives wanted to make sure that they could collect bigger paydays. And they didn't want to be restricted in their bonuses, because if they stayed under Tarp, their bonuses would have been limited. So they had, for example, Bank of America, in 1 month alone, sent in 11 different pleas to the government to let them out of the program. According to Romero, the, quote, recurring theme throughout the bank's requests was to exit the program. They got to get out, whether they're stable or not, because they got to collect those bonuses. Now, here's what Romero wrote in the report. Quote, the institutions that were too big to fail are bigger than they were before. It's very critical that regulators remain vigilant to banks' demands to relax capital requirements. So not only did they get out before it was safe, not only are they now bigger and not at all safe because we didn't do any precautions, but right now, the banks are arguing that their capital requirements, which are already dangerously low, should be even lower. Understand why capital requirements are so important. Because if you have $10 protected on $100 worth of bets, well, you're not that safe, but it's a lot better than having only $1 in the bank. Because any degree of risk, if you only have $1 for the $100 you're betting, will wipe you off the board. You only have to lose 1% for you to be completely wiped out. And what the banks are saying is, let us have even less dollars in the bank for the amount that we gamble. It is a recipe for disaster. The earlier Inspector General for Tarp, Neil Borofsky, came on this program and said we have fixed almost nothing and another collapse is inevitable. Now the current Inspector General for Tarp is saying basically the same thing, saying the banks are not stable. They never stabilized. They're still in trouble. And the only reason they left the program was because they wanted to make more money for their executives. And guess who aided and abetted them? The Treasury Department. And by the way, when the Treasury Department is asked about it today, Treasury Assistant Secretary Tim Masad says, quote, we are pleased that the report acknowledges that the nation's largest banks are much stronger today as a result of the actions the government took. Except that's the exact opposite of what the report said. But as long as you work for Tim Geithner, who cares what reality is? You just turn it upside on its head and then go, yes, the banks are always right. The report says they're wrong. No, screw the report. The report says they're right. Masad also says, Treasury wanted major banks to raise private capital and repay taxpayers because that was necessary to restore stability and strength to the financial system. Except the report says we have not restored stability or strength to the financial system.